if you've noticed that you get to the end of a day at work and you're exhausted and have no energy left for your personal life or social life, then this episode is just for you, my friend. There are small changes that you can make right now to help you feel more in control and less stressed, which is going to result in you getting home and having something left in the tank to enjoy your life. I've also got a recent example of where I applied this in my job and turned what could have been a stressful situation into something that ended up not even being a big deal at all. So let's get to it. You're listening to the Career Change Podcast with career coach, mum, and ex-corporate girl, Gina Hubbard. This is a no BS discussion about everything to do with your career, including how to make those hours at work happier, easier, and more fulfilling so that you can get on with living the life that you want. So, let's get going. Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of the Career Change Podcast. It's so great to have you here. Today we're going to talk about being tired, or more importantly, how not to be so tired at the end of your workday. Now, I've been struggling with this myself over the last couple of months. It's been the busiest time of year for my job, and I found that I was getting home and just struggling to get things done because I was feeling so drained. And not just physically drained, but also mentally. Like my mind was just mush, right? My brain was exhausted as well. And this started to ring alarm bells for me because it was feeling familiar. And here's why. So I quit my corporate job in February 2020, right before the pandemic. And I left that job to work in my coaching business full time for a while. And so I was really excited to do that. But I was also very excited because I had been in that job for years, many years, and it had become a toxic environment. So what I didn't realize when I left that job was that I was burnt out. And not in the I'm feeling a lot of stress type of burnout, but the physically and mentally exhausted, not sleeping, unable to enjoy any part of my life, feeling emotionally numb, having intrusive thoughts, self-doubt, lack of confidence, a severe lack of confidence, lack of focus, and unable to give a damn about anything. Burnout. That's pretty much what it was like. And it wasn't until November 2021 that I realized that that was why I had to take naps in the afternoons, right? And why there were days when I couldn't concentrate on what I wanted to do, even if it was just reading a book. I mean, that was difficult. Just reading a book was really hard. The concentration and the focus just wasn't there. And it wasn't until I was researching burnout so that I was better equipped as a coach to help my clients that were coming to me with burnout that I realized that it was actually work that I needed to do for myself first. Yeah, I had to suck that one up and admit that I was actually in a burnt out state and in the process of recovering from being burnt out. Now, I'm going to do an episode on burnout, so I won't go into the recovery story here and, what I did, etc. But I want you to know that it took me a good 12 months to recover from that to a point where I felt like I was a normal functioning person again, right? Now, I was functioning, obviously, but it didn't feel like it, right? My spark, my mojo was gone, and it took a while for the old me to come back, to resurface, to show her face. And I could feel it starting to happen again recently. And I was determined not to slip back into a burnout pattern of behavior. So I started practicing these very simple and easy little strategies that have made a huge difference to how I feel at work at the end of the day. And so I wanted to share them with you today. Recovering from burnout is a 2-step process. One is to recover mentally and physically from the burnout, and 2, I had to change how I worked, how I responded to work stresses so that I didn't get burnt out all over again. Because here is the thing, there is a portion of your burnout that you are responsible for. There is a portion of your burnout and actually any stress that we create in our own lives. And I know that's hard to hear, but it's actually a really good thing. Now, does your work environment contribute to your burnout? 100% yes, absolutely. And we will talk about that in the specialist burnout episode. I will dive a lot deeper into the topic of burnout, what causes it, how I recovered, etc. I promise, how I help my clients. But the way you think about your work, the way you think about yourself and your work, and the choices and decisions that you make have a contribution too. So when I started to feel that familiar exhaustion recently, I knew that I needed to change. I knew that I needed to take responsibility for what I had control over so that I didn't work myself back into a burnt out state. And what I learned and what I teach, the tools and strategies that I've put in place, I've been teaching to my clients because they work when you're finding that you're getting home and just exhausted at the end of the day. So you aren't necessarily burned out as such, but just so very, very tired. And you find that it takes you the whole weekend to recover. I need to get up on Monday morning and start that cycle all over again, right? And there is no way that I wanted that for myself again, and there is no way that I want that for you. So today we are talking about what you can do now, today, to stop feeling so exhausted all the time. Now, these are little strategies that I have used, and like I said, I give them to my clients to help them be aware of and to stay on top of their thoughts, their beliefs, and their behaviors that contribute to their stress at work. They're just little things that you can start doing today to make your day at work less stressful so that you get to the end of the day and not feel so tired and depleted. Because stress is exhausting, but there is a better way. So let's get into them. If you are multitasking, come back to me now, because here they are. So the first thing you need to do is to observe yourself working. I know that sounds weird, but we actually have the ability to observe ourselves and our thoughts and our behaviors. Awareness is 80% of any coaching transformation. So check in with yourself regularly to see how you feel. Are your shoulders tense? Are you having negative and intrusive thoughts about yourself or any aspects of your job? Do you feel frustrated, angry, or overwhelmed? I realized that on the road to burnout, I had lost sight of myself. I wasn't checking in. I was turning off, I think, is probably really good. I was disconnected to my own needs, both physically and emotionally, and I was making my work, my tasks, the top priority. And I wasn't taking like regular breaks, and I would work until my eyes got blurry and sore. So in a way, I was abusing myself. I was neglecting myself. I was ignoring the needs of my body as well as my mind. And these things are my responsibility, and I wasn't taking care of myself. So there just isn't any excuse. So you know that feeling of rushing? Where do you store that in your body? Observe it. When you feel rushed, what part of your body tenses up? Does it feel good? No, it doesn't. Did you know that feeling rushed is actually an option? It's not compulsory. And actually feeling rushed doesn't actually make you go any faster. In fact, it slows you down because you're so tense, and it can contribute to you making mistakes as well because you're rushing. It's things like this, the way you feel and respond to stresses at work, that you need to be aware of, you need to observe. You need to make choices. Once you observe it, decide how are you going to respond. Instead of just reacting without thinking, that it's going to make the biggest difference to how you feel at the end of the day. Getting that pause in between how you think and how you feel and then what you do. And being conscious about how you respond. Another thing I do is I take micro breaks regularly, because I'm someone that can work for long periods of time laser focused. So for me, a micro break means taking my eyes off the screen and disconnecting my mind from my work and looking out the window. Now, does that mean that when I get back to work, I have to get my brain back on the job again? Absolutely. But it needs a break. And so do, you need a break, and your brain needs a break, and your body needs a break. I connect with my body. So I disconnect from the work, and then I connect back to my body, which is just a woo-woo way of saying that I check in with how I feel. I check in with how my feet feel on the floor, how my back feels against the chair. I take a deep breath and I relax my shoulders, because that is where I personally hold all of my stress. It takes about 15 to 20 seconds, and then I get back to work again. I do this multiple times an hour, and it makes a big difference. Another thing that I do is I always take a lunch break. It might only be 20 minutes, but I always step away from my computer and I eat. It's not always at the same time, but I always take it. I fit it in where I can if it's a super busy day. And in fact, if it's a super busy day, that's even more important that you take breaks. We have busy days. That's okay. We all have them. That's not a problem. It's the not having a break that is the problem. And actually, any job that demands that you regularly work through your lunch break, it's not worth it. It's not worth it because of what it's doing to your health and your emotional and mental well-being. So check in with that. Is it more that the job dictates that you work through your lunch break, or is it really your decision to work through? Be honest. It's really important to know if it's your decision or not, because if it is your decision, you have the power to make a different one. On my lunch break, I also try to get some sun. I go for a walk, I get some fresh air. If it's raining, I watch something on my phone that makes me laugh. Just something little that is going to shift my mood or boost my mood. It might be music for you, or reading a book, or messaging or talking to a friend. Whatever it is, make the conscious decision to do that on your breaks. The other thing that I do is I watch my thoughts. So it is so easy to spiral down into negative thoughts about a client or a work colleague or yourself or the work that you've given or have been given, but your thoughts are your choice and they create how we feel. Our thoughts create our feelings. So when I stop for a micro break, I also check in with how I'm feeling emotionally, and if I'm feeling frustrated and angry, upset or overwhelmed, for example. And then I look for the thoughts that I was thinking, and I either decide, actually, I don't want to think like that anymore because it doesn't feel good, or if I have to think it through because it's part of a problem or something that's going on, then maybe it's better to reframe or get a different perspective on how I'm thinking. So in my current job, I have a client that is demanding in numerous ways. So this client complained softly, in a roundabout way, complained about the way that I was working recently, and I very quickly found that I got defensive and frustrated. Now, when I took a micro break and I checked in, I realized how I was feeling, and I was able to identify the thoughts that made me feel defensive. And not only were they making me feel bad and defensive, but I also realized that actually they might not necessarily be true. Or it might not be that I was telling myself the whole story. So I was thinking that this client was just a dickhead who didn't know what he was doing. Okay, to be honest, that's kind of what I was thinking. But the truth was, this client did know what he was doing, but he didn't know what I was doing to help him. He didn't have the transparency because we're in different cities. I'm not working in the same office as him, so I can see how he thinks what he does, which led him to complain, to mention it. I realized that I was telling myself sort of half-truths and not all the story, the whole story, and it was making me feel frustrated. I wasn't seeing it from his perspective. And it's easy to jump to being defensive when someone criticizes your work. I'm sure you know what that feels like. But it's super important to be curious about it and ask, is there some truth to what they are saying? What am I responsible for? Honestly, it gives you your power back. It doesn't feel like it, but it does. Nothing had changed, nothing at all. Nothing changed except my thoughts, the way that I was thinking about the client. I was telling myself the whole truth. I was looking at it from a different perspective. I was reframing. But it made all the difference when I rang the client to talk to him. Instead of being angry, I was curious, and it meant that I got the opportunity to explain myself and to hear where he was coming from. And that is something that wouldn't have happened if I'd rung him with that tinge of frustration underneath my professionalism. And that is just one example of interactions that I had in my working day that was contributing to how stressed out and exhausted I was feeling at the end of the day. It was my thoughts I was having that were my responsibility and no one else's. And taking the time to make these small adjustments like that to my thinking and taking micro breaks and making sure that I was taking a lunch break, that's meant that I now get to the end of the day with energy to do more than just flop on the couch and complain to my husband about some shitty client. I don't have to drag myself through my evening, and I'm not so grumpy, and I sleep better as well. This is my responsibility. This is what I'm accountable for when it comes to my own health and the way that I work. The tips that I've given you here today, they sound small and insignificant, but trust me, they are life-changing if you commit to doing them. I've changed how I think about my work, and I take micro breaks regularly, and I check in and relax my body where I feel tension. One client told me that she has seen a big improvement in her mood and energy levels in the evenings after work with these techniques. And she's getting more done because she isn't so stressed out. Because a stressed out mind isn't a productive mind. I know that I have what it takes to stop feeling so stressed out and maybe even working myself into burnout. I believe that I can turn that around. And I know that we all have that power given the right tools and strategies and training. And time. Definitely time. These changes don't happen overnight, and you have to be committed to not only making them, but to continue to work on these things every single day, just like any other change that you make in your life. Take back control over what you have control over. Stop giving your job the best of you. Make sure that you save some energy for the things that matter most to you. And I bet even if you love your job, there is something else in your life that you want energy for. Okay, my friends, that is it. I'd love it if you are on Instagram. Hit me up in the DMs and let me know if you have a little strategy or tool that you use to help you reduce your stress in your work life. I would really love to hear from it, and I'd love to hear from you. You can find me easily. I am at Gina Hubbard Coach over on Instagram. So I look forward to seeing you there. Hey there, are you ready to know exactly why you can't make any progress in your career? If you've been working hard and are feeling burnt out and trapped, but you're not sure why, or you don't even know where to start to make positive change, then I've got you covered. Imagine what it would be like if you could earn the salary that you want, feel energized by what you do, and be free of self-doubt. But I'm here to tell you that you can. Your lack of confidence might be holding you back, and you might not even know it. So let's fix that. Click the link in the show notes to get my free masterclass on the 3 ways your lack of confidence sabotages your career and how to turn it around and get the salary you deserve. Inside, you'll learn the 3 key ways you might be sabotaging your own career, how these show up for even the most accomplished and self-aware woman just like you and me, and how to get your mojo back, reclaim the power in your career, and start finally earning the salary that you deserve. Born out of the blood, sweat and tears of going through this myself and the hundreds of hours of coaching women just like you to their own career success, the 3 ways I'm teaching in this training are little known and hardly talked about. So head over to the show notes now and click the link to get the free and instant access to this masterclass.